Parliament's Committee on Mineral Resources says diplomatic efforts are needed to deal with illegal mining. Now, we've been reporting that 31 illegal miners at a disused vent shaft in Welkom in the Free State were killed in a blast back in May. Their bodies were only discovered this week. Recovery teams can't bring the bodies to the surface due to high methane levels. Now, the chairperson of Parliament's Committee on Mineral Resources, Sahlulele Luzipo, joins us virtually from Bloemfontein. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Some real shocking information coming through to us from this specific incident in Welkom in the Free State. And I'm sure you and your colleagues were appalled by the news that over 30 illegal miners had lost their lives, and that they had lost their lives back in May, only to be discovered now. Your reaction to that news, sir?
Let me say good a day to you and the viewership. Yes, it is true that when you receive such news, is quite you will always receive them with quite shock, but at the same time, you seek to say what solutions could be found and what could be the reasons that such an incident can take place. The challenge here is that this is a very complex matter, and we are of the view that we have to allow first your legal and procedures, that they must proceed obviously with speed so that we can create certainty. At this stage, it is still the information received that there are 31, but it also says 3 were brought to surface, and therefore would make it to be 28. So until such time that the process of recovery or the process of investigation underground can first confirm that yes, there are people that have passed on or who died underground. Secondly, then they have been recovered and they are overboard. And then at that stage, we must then be able to deal with the issue. How did those bodies find themselves underground? And what could be the age? Because it's very critical that we deal with the issue of the age, because it may also be not just a criminal offense of mining illegal. It could also be something that is tantamount to even child trafficking and child labor. So there might be a number of permutations that we may discover out of this thing. But what we can't deny and run away from is that if such incidents are really taking place, it actually means what we have always been raising, that we've got a mammoth task at our hands to deal effectively and decisively with the problem and the scourge of illegal mining, especially when we know that in most cases, especially in the gold industry, what are the permutations or the consequences of it?
We also understand that the big part of this ongoing issue is the fact that we have a number of unused mines that haven't been properly closed or rehabilitated. I've read here from Benchmarks Foundation's David van Wyk. He's pointed to the fact that this specific mine that we're talking about was previously owned by Harmony, and it last operated in the 1990s. So it's been 30 years and it still hasn't been rehabilitated and closed down. How much of a problem is the fact that we don't have enough mines that have been closed down correctly by the companies that own them and who have been operating from them?
Look, I think we must also draw a distinction. In the 1990s, you did not have obligatory legislation that made it obligatory to do rehabilitation, especially what we call concurrent rehabilitation. You would have only have an effective and enforcement law, 2004-2006, which is your MPRDA, that started now to say this is what has to happen. We wouldn't understand the extent. The second thing is that the rehabilitation itself provides specifications that we must deal with. I don't want to sound like we're undermining that thing. The biggest question is that South Africa is the host of illegal mining activities, including high levels of death, whether it's infighting amongst those or not. But in most cases, these events reflect that it is not only or is not mostly South Africans that are found conducting these kinds of things, which is why we say, even if we were to close the mines, it doesn't mean there will not be what I would call illegal labor that is being drawn from our neighboring countries to conduct such acts of elements. And therefore, the solution at the end of the day, while South Africa has got a primary duty to ensure that we've got mines that are closed properly, the issue is that where one, illegal labor is drawn, to illegal weapons or machinery, for an example, the bombs that are used underground, the firearms and everything that is being used. Those are some of the things that we need to ensure that we engage our neighboring countries. I would even imagine a situation where 31 South Africans died conducting illegal mining in another country. I would say that South Africa as a country on its own will be irresponsible not to then take a thorough exercise of making sure that how those people would have been recruited from South Africa, why they found themselves in this situation in another country. So SADC on its own must begin to take the issue of illegal mining very seriously, because it affects citizens of different countries within the SADC.
It's been reported that the Lesotho government had flagged this tragedy in Welkom with the South African authorities more than a month ago. Do you have any knowledge of that kind of communication from the Lesotho government? And does that in itself point to the fact that there's a need for more communication across our borderlines?
We just heard, I wouldn't, obviously, I'm not in that portfolio committee of international relations. We have not heard. That is why we say we must allow investigation to take its course. But let's make a simple example. It has been a common fact, common knowledge, that at some point, Eastern Cape was predominantly the country where migrant labor system had been affected. That's where migrant labor was drawn. And it was known, not necessarily that there would have been a government. But Eastern Cape positively would have then said, we want to see development taking place. The point here is that when you look into these cases, I can assure you, I would be surprised if you were to find those 31 bodies that are underground, that there are people who might be 25, 24. That is why we say, when you look in most cases, some of the people that are used are children that are 14, 16, which means they are being used because in the holdings, when they are able to enter inside, you will need the smaller bodies of people that can go inside. That is why we then say it should not only be a responsibility of South Africans. If there is a potential that one country is importing or is exporting potential child labor in slavery conditions, that country has got a duty and a responsibility equally than the country that such exercise are practiced on within its borders.
Okay. Where do you think the next step should then be taken? You are the chairperson of Parliament's Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy. Is this something that you're going to be taking up officially?
No, obviously, but you must understand our responsibility is to make regulations that make it a point that illegal mining takes effect under those conditions that allowed, including the potential investment, which we have done it, and I think it's an initiative that we took together with our to bring in and say, let's put our heads together. Let's start to do work together with the portfolio committee on police so that criminal activities like this one, because now all what you are having there is a case of inquest. Secondly, we've then brought in Home Affairs so that we can be able to make sure that these undocumented people or who come to our countries, we develop mechanisms to do that. We have said now we also, in our recommendation, there is a need to make sure that we bring on board our sister committee on justice and correctional services. So those are some of the initiatives. Obviously, a portfolio committee works on the basis of committee agreement, not on the basis of individual interventions. That is why we have said, from our point of view, this issue goes beyond just, it's not a departmental issue. It's a challenge to the state, and it is a threat to national security. It is on those bases that we say, look beyond your capacity to deal with this issue. You also need to bring your sister countries within the SADC region so that a solution, when it is found, when we fight this battle, no one can then hide behind that I belong to this particular country, not to South Africa. So that is the point, which is why we said, even those countries within SADC They must not say because these things are not happening in their borders and take it very easily that it will be solved by South Africans. The fact of the matter is that the gist of or the major part of activities of illegal mining also involve citizens from their own countries.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That is Sahlulele Luzipo, is the chairperson for Parliament's Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy, speaking to us virtually there from Bloemfontein.